You're listening to The Builder's Mindset with Mike DiGiovanni, presented by Amazing Mindsets. Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Builder's Mindset. Thank you again for everybody who's taken the time to listen and share the episode. We really appreciate it. We do it because we love home building. We really, it's not, a song I was listening to recently where it said it's, I don't do it for the money, I don't do it for the fame. As long as someone's listening, I don't care who knows my name. And I've spent 20 years in home building, and I have really grown to love it. It's a noble profession. I really enjoy it, and so I hope that you're getting something out of the episodes that you're listening to. I thank you for listening to them. Thank you for sharing them. Thank you for keep coming back. And so this episode, where it's kind of interesting, you hear people talk about like the days, what time of year and whatnot it is. It's interesting because I have to think about when we get into that. Like, I want to make sure I realize that like I'm recording it on a certain day, and then we're going to launch it on a different day, and then who knows when you're going to listen to it. So, but put in context, I'm actually recording this on the 10th of December. We're going to release this episode on the 16th. So you're listening now, and it's sometime December 16th or later. So anyway, we're going to switch things up a little bit. We got a lot of great episodes coming up this season. We're going to talk about, we're going to have a special Christmas episode coming on the 23rd. We're going to talk about packages and option packages, because I think that would be a really good one, kind of fitting to go along with right by the episode closest to Christmas. And then the 23rd, we're going to talk about New Year's resolutions for home building. So hope you enjoy those. Hope you keep coming back, and thank you again. So today, we're going to talk about improving home builder margins, and I'm going to tease you a little bit. I'm going to go over, we're releasing a survey here recently, a free survey for everyone to get kind of a quick and dirty of, get you thinking about your operations, your business, how it's running. And the long and short of it is this, and I'm going to kind of run through this a little bit, and then hopefully you'll take the survey, click the link, and send it. And if you turn in the survey, we'll do a 30-minute call with you, talk a little bit about the results, and see if there's some areas we can give you some guidance to head in the right direction as we go into 2025 to improve your performance, your profit, and maybe your people. So 15 things to focus on now for better margins and more profit. And like I said, this is December 16th or after, sometime after that. But really, this is to kind of get you primed up and thinking about what are you going to attack next year in 2025 to really start moving the needle on your home building operations, your business, or your trade partner operations in your business. Really, this is really more focused for the home builder specifically, but I think trade partners, you'll get an interesting take on the things that I think about when I go into a new organization, and the things I want to start diving into right away to see where's that low-hanging fruit. So with that, as we talked about, we always try to keep these episodes less than 20 minutes. We got 15 questions. We're a few minutes in, so we're going to try to get each one of these questions at a little bit high level, and then we'll talk about like kind of a little bit behind them and get through all of them. So the first two kind of go together, and we just releasing the earnings report. I think this is timely. Do you know your current profit margins? And I know you can go pull reports and all that, but right now, do you know roughly about what your profit margins are going to be for the year? Do you know if the fourth quarter is going to be better than the first, better than the third? And then are they where you want them to be? Okay, so just think about that, and if you don't have it, click the link for the earnings report. We can get that to you as well too. Kind of see how the public builders are doing and see where you rank as it relates to them. So do you know your current profit margins, and are they where you want them to be? Do you know your direct cost as a percent of revenue? I like this one because it varies, right? You might be building a 2,500 square foot, and that's the typical, in the home building industry, we always talk about like the typical home. 2,500 square foot, 2-story home. It used to be sort of like the 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath, 4 bedrooms up, 2 baths up, a half bath down. A lot of builders, particularly in Southern California, the full bedroom and bathroom down is a big one now. So the 5.3, and that's usually a little bit larger. It's hard to squeeze that in a 2,500 square foot home. But what we also seeing though is we're also seeing a 4.3 where you've got your primary up with your primary bath and your 2 secondary bedrooms and a secondary bath, and then a bed and a bath downstairs for the guests that come. But so the cost to build that in Texas is going to be significantly lower than in Southern California, and it's going to be lower in Southern California than Northern California. It's going to be more in Denver than it is in Texas, more in Denver or less in Arizona than it is in Denver or Colorado. But as a percent of revenue, as we've talked about before, it generally should be a trend line where if you're on the West Coast, you want to kind of be in that 30-ish% of revenue. If you're not in the West Coast, you're kind of really more like Texas, Denver, the Southeast, Florida, then you're probably going to be more in that neighborhood of like the upper 40s to 50. So do you know what your direct costs as a percent of revenue are? And I'm curious to see who does. And that's kind of for my high level leaders, like, are you aware of these numbers and what do you think about them? Product development, as we talk about from a survey perspective, I love to ask people in home building this is, do you have a clearly defined product development process? And then this isn't in the survey, but then I would ask, if your answer is yes, ask yourself, do you follow it? Because one of my favorite sayings is there's only one thing worse than not having a process, and that's having a process and not following it. If you're not going to follow the process you have, you might as well not have the process to begin with, because then that just teaches people in your culture, in your company, your organization, that it's just, you don't have to follow any guidelines or anything. So do you have a clearly defined product development process? Do you reuse any product? Those of you who know me from the industry, if you worked with me, I'm a big advocate of, I call them library plans. I think that's the best way to control your cost, understand your costs, and make your trades really appreciate what you do, because that repeatability, even if you're building a more complicated higher-end product, if you do it over and over again, your purchasing team gets to know it, your construction team gets to know it, your trades get to know it. So do you reuse product? Highly recommend that you do, but not everybody does. And so that's something to think about. Is there time set for constructability meetings, AKA, FKA, value engineering meetings? Do you, in that product development process, do you have specific time set up, and do you conduct constructability meetings? We're going to do an episode early next year on how to conduct constructability meetings, and we're going to talk about the best way to do them and how to incorporate them into the product development timeline. So, okay, so now we're going to go to purchasing. Do you have a clearly defined bid process? There's a lot of things that go into this, and some people say, oh yeah, we have a minimum of, we have a company policy, we have to have a minimum of 3 bids. If we don't take the lowest bid, we have to get this level of approval. It's different than if we do take the lowest bid. And what I would say, though, more for me is it's more about, when you talk about a bid process, do you have a timing for your bid process that relates to your model start date for your new community? And do you back that in and then hook it? Or should I say, then you hook your product development process to that? And we can go deeper into that in another episode as well. But if you have a clearly defined product development process and you tie that into a clearly defined bid process, you are going to be more effective from a purchasing perspective. And I will tell you my experience in talking with people, in my personal experience, the purchasing department is it's often the one that is the most, from a division leader's perspective or corporate's perspective, they always think that the worst running department is purchasing, or often, let me phrase that, often purchasing is the worst run. And when I get in and get under the hood and start looking at some of this stuff, what I find is the problems center around purchasing, but they're not about purchasing. Purchasing ends up often being the hub between purchasing and sales, and purchasing and construction, purchasing and product development, purchasing and finance. And when things aren't going well, we tend to blame purchasing, but it's often, like as we said in our last episode, save me purchasing. Purchasing can't solve all your problems. So do you have a clearly defined bid process, and is it connected to your product development process and your community opening process? So do you have a clearly defined specification and option selection process? There's another good one, and that you have to have one. You have to have agreement and buy-in from all of the different silos. Yes, I use the term silo because most of the builders that I go talk to, even when everybody gets along really well, they still have silos in terms of how they operate: construction, sales, purchasing, and whatnot. They still operate in silos even when they get along. What I say is, like, if you have all of those silos and you don't get along, you have a recipe for disaster at your building company. If you have the silos and they get along well and they like each other, you're going to have, it's still a recipe for disaster. You're just smiling when you're at the disaster party. What you really want to work getting to is, and this is what we help our clients do, is get to the point where you break down the silos: construction, sales, purchasing, and customer service, and product development, and then to some degree as well finance. They know each other, they like each other, they work together, they go on field visits together, they talk about product development together, they talk about schedules and trades together, they talk about options and performance and quality. When you have that, and that's the culture at your organization, then you start to outperform your contemporaries and your peers. So do you have a clearly defined specification, option, selection process? Hopefully you do. If not, that's something to work on in the new year. Do you have a finite and defined set of standard specifications and correlating options? Look, I worked for a builder once who said yes to this question. When I looked at their spec sheet, they had 5 specifications, which in my opinion is too many for a production home builder to begin with, but they had already added a 1.75 and a 2.5. Now, that means they had 7, and they hadn't even really used all 7. They took the time to develop the 5, and before they even got through all 5, they had already developed a 1.75 and a 2.5. I'm not going to derail the whole podcast with why wasn't it 1.5 and a 2.5? I'm not kidding. One was called 1.75. And when I asked the question, well, why do you have more? Well, it wasn't exactly this. It didn't need to be this. We needed to keep up with the Joneses across the neighborhood because this one was doing that and that one was doing that. And I said, well, how come one's a 1.75 and a 2.5? Why isn't the 1.75 a 1.5? Well, because it's almost a 2. It's a lot closer to the 2 than the 2.5 is to the... It was hilarious. So do you have a finite and defined set of standard specifications and correlating options? And the correlating options is key too. You should have, in my opinion, if you're not like an everything all-inclusive builder where there's no choices, no anything, you should have 2 or 3 clearly defined specifications, and your option program should be specific to those different levels and specifications. And we'll talk about, as I said, next week, we'll talk a little bit more in depth about that when we get into unwrapping the Christmas packages for the Christmas episode. Is purchasing a part of the product development process? If you've listened to every one of my episodes, ding, 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 you get a gold star. We love you, and I thank you very much. But if you have, you know this is very near and dear to my heart. Purchasing should, at the very least, be on the governing committee, the governing body, the team, whatever you're going to call it, of your product development process and committee. And they should have a legitimate seat at the table, equal in part to everybody else in there. If you listen to the episodes, you know I believe they should be the chair of that committee. I believe they should be driving that committee, and they should be serving that committee to get what's best for the division. But is purchasing truly a part of the product development process? If they're not, you're missing out on so much. You're missing out on timing, you're missing out on cost, you're missing out on streamlining your bid process and your product development process. And then this will tie back into the constructability meeting. If they're not, then you're probably not conducting really good constructability / value engineering meetings, okay? Is purchasing a part of establishing the target cost per square foot for all potential communities? Don't know how many times I've seen, once again, let's go back to the purchasing save me. We didn't even talk to purchasing. We didn't even show them the product. We didn't even tell them, hey, we want to build this at this zip code and this is why it goes there. We'll get into home market analysis and why that's important. But we don't even give them the opportunity to say, hey, Jimmy, we're not going to be able to build that for $75 a foot. Maybe in 99, we could have built that for $75 a foot, but that's really $82 right now. And maybe that's the difference between you buy that piece of land and you don't. And it's a balance, because I know we do have to buy land, we do have to build on the land, and we have to get product to market. That's what we do. We're home builders. But if we believe it's a $75 a foot, we start moving forward with a certain product, and that's an $85 a foot product, we're going to be in trouble. And as I said, if you didn't listen to last week's episode on Purchasing Save Me, more on that, go back and listen to that one there. Okay, do you have, make sure I get this one right, do you have a target for your dollar per square foot as a percent of revenue? So have you connected that together from a market analysis perspective? Do you know what your revenue is, and can you drive to that target cost per square foot? So that's where the number comes in from. So, as the land team is looking at performance and thinking about future deals, they can go to the purchasing team and say, hey, this is the revenue for the comps in the area. This is what we know we can sell a home for here, and this is the cost per square foot. Can we make this work in that square footage range? Yes, we can. And then once again, now you're getting to the right spot. Once again, go back to the product development process and purchasing, having a seat at the table. To achieve that, you have to pick the right product, right? Are you currently at or below the target? From a divisional perspective, is your current cost per square foot, is it where you want to be when you think about it as a percent of revenue? How are your communities performing to the original pro forma? How is your division performing overall to this metric? Next, do you know your cost per square foot of all your floor plans? Do you have a quick, easy report you can get to? You can get it. Does your land team have that as a reference that they can use when they're looking at deals or looking at pieces of land? And they're like, oh, we believe this should be here. I've got that quick and dirty, and it's updated kind of once every 90 days, at least once every 6 months. So at least they have the tools to make effective decisions without having to go ask the purchasing department about every single deal they do. So do you know that information? Is it available? This also, as talked about, ties back into that product library and reuse. Really helps make this a lot easier, okay? And then, if you've seen any of my earnings reports, you know one of my favorite metrics as it relates to the health of the market overall, the health of a region, the health of a local market, the health of a community. Do you know your absorption rate by community? How many homes are you selling per month per community? Why do I like this so much? Because I truly believe that 3 is sort of the magic salt line. If you're at 3 or better, you're looking good, in my opinion, from a turning and inventory perspective. If you're below 3, then in my opinion, you should be selling a higher value product, selling a higher cost product relative to the market. You're willing to accept that lower absorption pace, but then the margin should be commensurate with that. And so the margin should be a little bit better. And we've talked about this in some of the calls we had already reported. Some builders will prefer a higher margin and a lower absorption. Some will prefer a higher absorption and a lower margin. So do you know that if you're where you're at compared to 3, are you below the salt line? Are you above the salt line? I would say also it's not really so much a salt line. I'd say like kind of 3 to 5 is probably a range where you would say that is solid, healthy. So I would say really the salt line is, I put 3 at the salt line because in my opinion, if you get below that, there's got to be a specific reason why. That's usually a red flag for me. But 4 is really the salt line. I'm a big fan of 1 sale per community per week, 4.33 per month, because we all know the only month with 4 weeks is February. And so, if you're in that 3 to 5 range, you're in that good range. Kind of 4 is like, to me, the good number, but most people will say 3 and above is healthy. 4 and above is strong. When you get over 5, it's the opposite of being below 2, in my opinion. There needs to be a reason. Have you not raised your prices to capture potential margin that's out there? Are you doing something for a reason? Why? Is there a specific reason? If you're above 5 or below 2, there should be a specific reason, and the numbers should pan out as to why that is. So, yeah, there you have it. We're talking about improving your home builder margins, 15 things to focus on now for better margins. The survey is, it should be out now. If you're interested in getting it, hit me up on LinkedIn. You know where I'm at there. If you got my email, you can also reach out there. We'll make sure you can have access to it if you're looking for it. We'll put a connect in the show notes so that it's available. And again, we really appreciate everybody who listens. We hope you enjoy these. If you have ideas for topics that you'd like us to discuss, let us know. And we hope everybody's had a wonderful Thanksgiving. We hope you're rolling into an amazing holiday season. And we'll talk to you next week when we talk about Christmas gifts for the holidays for home builders. And we talk about packages for the home building industry. How to set up your options to have great packages to make your business run more efficiently and to improve your option margin. Take care and have an amazing day. Thanks for listening to The Builder's Mindset with Mike DiGiovanni, presented by Amazing Mindsets. Remember, your mindset matters